Morning Blues, it is January the 6th, 2025. And yeah, this is the first episode of Morning Blues in 2025. The new morning show, as I spoke about, I believe on Friday. I've wanted to do a morning show forever, and we started doing it at least once a week for a period of time last year. That was live. This show may eventually turn live, but right now I'm going to be doing it Monday mornings, Wednesday mornings and Friday mornings. Effectively looking through recent Chelsea news, looking through some of your comments and just having a relaxed chat at the start of the day about Chelsea and general football stuff. Please do like, subscribe. If you want to see more of Morning Blues, please do let me know, because I know in the past when I've either done Morning Blues or spoke with people about a morning Chelsea show, people seem to want it because there doesn't seem to be many of those around. So maybe it could be something that grows over the course of the year. I also do just want to quickly say Substack. I'm going quite big this year, 2025, on Substack. So I've got a piece out. It's going to kind of be a weekly column newsletter, free to subscribe to, but I'm going to be doing some paid stuff on Substack as well. So if you enjoy my writing and want to see more content, please do link in the description box below. It's going to be called, it's already the first edition is out, A Shot of Chelsea. So you can read it whilst you're having your morning commute or morning caffeine or beverage of choice, just like you can listen to Morning Blues. I woke up this morning and I saw that it is already 2 years since Gianluca Vialli passed away, which is a bit weird that it's already 2 years, but it just takes me back to that week when he did pass away and all of the incredible tributes, especially leading to the game at Stamford Bridge. I believe it was the Crystal Palace game, and there was a lot of lovely tributes. And then, of course, at the end of 2023, we had that incredible moment, a really emotional moment with the game at Stamford Bridge with Chelsea legends against Bayern Munich. That was a great moment. So obviously, tributes and thoughts towards Gianluca Vialli, one of Chelsea's most beloved and real icons for a generation. I feel like the main thing to speak about today, other than the kind of the January blues firmly hitting in now, and not in a good way, like we're fully out of the festive period now, and it's always at this time of the year when people are going back to work, maybe you're going back to school, back to uni, whatever it is, and kind of now the bulk of the year is beginning, and there isn't tons to look forward to. However, if you are a football fan, it is the January transfer window, and because Chelsea do not have a game until next weekend against Morecambe, which, to be fair, isn't the biggest game in the calendar, a lot of the attention will go to Chelsea's recent Premier League form and mainly, I'm sure, transfer speculation. So that's what I want to kind of focus on in this show. Not only news and talking about it in some of your comments, but also just whether Chelsea acting in this window is a smart idea. Now, I know the instinctive reaction is, well, of course it is, because there are flaws in the squad. And I agree that there are flaws in the squad. I said this in the summer. It became less prevalent because Chelsea were doing well. I do firmly believe there are incomplete parts of this squad. And when you have sporting directors who spoke about a 4-window plan and wanting to be judged after that 4-window plan, and we get to the end of the 4-window plan and there are still gaping holes or at least massive oversights in the squad, again, it tracks back to that old question I spoke about during the summer that I don't think it reflects well on the sporting directors. I don't think it reflects well on the Chelsea transfer strategy. And a season isn't defined by September, October, November. It is defined, especially during these months, but it's defined by a lot more than that. And I think over the past week, when we've had injuries, you get suspensions, you get tiredness, you have to rotate, or in the case of Maresca, you refuse to rotate or even look at your bench. I think that the holes in the squad have started to become apparent. The big one for me this month is obviously centre-back. Striker is a little bit different. The only reason I say that is because although I appreciate, I think it is another area. It's the second area where I do think Nicholas Jackson needs support. I think he needs competition, especially if Maresca looks hesitant to use Nkunku as a serious option, which I find a little bit strange. Centre-back, at least there are more obvious solutions, or at least ones that you could see coming to fruition this month. The first one is Trevor Chalobah. because we had reports before the game against Crystal Palace that there's no recall clause in Trev's loan to Palace. Stop talking about it. Don't focus on it. And then Carefree Youth, my good friend Carefree Youth, who knows a lot about Chelsea, is very well linked with academy players, comes out either before or after the game and says, no, actually, there is a recall clause in this loan for Chelsea. And Oliver Glasner was asked about it post-game, and he said, I could see that there was Disasi and Tosin on the bench. I don't know if you need another one if you play with two. I was just reading that Anselmino comes back, so they have 5. So he didn't exactly come out instantly and reject a recall clause. So, I mean, I believe what Carefree Youth says. So I believe there is a recall clause. If there is, to me, it is an absolute no-brainer. You bring back Trevor Chalobah. But unfortunately, we're not dealing with what is logical in terms of bringing back a good defender when you've got a need for a new defender. I think Trev was, if you take away Thiago Silva, was Chelsea's best centre-back, most reliable centre-back last season. He has been that for a long period of time. As a squad option, he is far better than Axel Disasi. I think he's better on his day than Tosin and Adebayo. However, you add into this mix Fofana himself, because it's come out over the weekend, at least from a screenshot that Cy Phillips shared of a direct message on Instagram, Twitter or Instagram, of Fofana responding that it's actually not true that he's out for the rest of the season, as was feared when Maresca said it. And there may have been some mind games behind why Maresca said that in his press conference that we're going to get to. So Fofana said, it's not true. I'm not out for the rest of the season. I don't know why he, Enzo Maresca, said that. I will be back in 4 to 6 weeks. There's been reports from L'Equipe that not only suggest that Fofana will be back sooner, but the real reason Maresca said that in his press conference was to try and force the hand of the club to act in this January transfer window. Not entirely a new strategy from a head coach. But you see, if that is the real words of Fofana, as I said, sometimes you see these screenshots and very quickly they're debunked. So I take it with a pinch of salt. But if that's true, because we've also heard reports that Fofana is being advised by the Chelsea medical staff to have a surgery, he doesn't want to have one. And if he's back in 4 to 6 weeks now, that doesn't mean that the problem's then gone and he's back for the rest of the season. If he needs surgery and he comes back and he's instantly re-injured, then it could cause an even bigger problem. So again, it's still one of these issues that I do think is concerning for Chelsea and leads back to that lack of, defensive solidity and kind of depth that you really need at this time of the season when you do lose a player like Wesley Fofana. And Cy Phillips reported this morning that Enzo Maresca wants squad improvements this month. I feel like centre-back is going to be the one because we've heard Murillo from Nottingham Forest, Diomande from Sporting Lisbon. There's been talks and rumours of both Fikayo Tomori coming back to the club from AC Milan. And I think more strongly Mark Guehi, who I've said before, I think is my first option. The reason Mark Guehi is my first option is because he's Premier League. And the reason I speak about this, and I wrote about this in my shot of Chelsea on Substack, is that I think you've got to be really sure when you part with money this month. And the example I go back, maybe it's fair or unfair, but I think Olivier Giroud is such a great example because he needed such little time to adapt. And I think it's important that we don't do what we did 2 years ago when we sign a load of players, young players from foreign leagues who come in, and Graham Potter spoke about this recently, how it's difficult for those players to then adapt. So it's why I think if you're going to sign, I'd be looking to sign players that you're pretty sure could adapt and come in very quickly. Guehi, as I've said before, is a different type of signing. He's not a makeshift. He is a first choice. You are buying a player that then you very much see to be your first choice. How does that impact Wesley Fofana? You are making a severe, concrete, I think, judgment there that you're bringing in Mark Guehi, but it undeniably, I think, significantly improves what you currently have. And I think having Guehi and Colwell, that is, I think, already makes you possess one of the strongest centre-back pairings in the league. So that is something to look at. And I just don't think Trev will come back purely because I think it would look very bad on the club. Like the way they treated him, banished him from the first team training, very much wanted him out, and then you're recalling him a couple months later. And they've got Disasi and Tosin. I think you should be selling Disasi now, whilst there is still maybe some room to get some money for him. I think the longer they wait to sell Axel Disasi, the worse it's going to get. That's just my instinct at the moment, looking at players of the Zassi's ilk and form. I think you end up having a situation where, you look at his age, he's not exactly a young player. So the argument that he has years and years and years to grow, I think is hard to see. Sure, in the past, we've seen players like Antonio Rudiger massively transform at later stages of their career. That could happen. However, I don't personally see that with Axel Disasi. Tosin, he's a free signing. I guess you could argue he's a very low risk signing, and out of the two, you'd rather keep Tosin. However, Anselmino is another one. Does he get minutes against Morecambe? Is he sufficiently ready? Josh Achimpong, great to see him get a start, because at least that's an internal option that could be used moving forward. However, if Chelsea are going to move in this window, they need to sign a serious centre-back, in my opinion. Other news here regards Torino offered about 9.6 million apparently for Cesare Casadei, a permanent move away, percentage of a future resale, and apparently Chelsea's request is to reach a total package of around 16 million with a buyback option in their favour. Casadei is not surprising to me. I really can't see Casadei's situation at Chelsea getting significantly better. It feels like his career is stalled, and it's probably right for him to move on. Was it right for us to bring him back a year ago from that loan at Leicester with Enzo Maresca? Not entirely sure, but that's the situation now. I do want to speak about another central midfielder, and that is Andre Santos, who of course is doing incredibly well. And a lot of the talk currently, there really is a lack of reliable depth in central midfield, and that has been exposed this season already. If you're selling Casadei, who's been used as a backup option, especially in the Conference League, what is Kiernan Dewsbury doing? Where is Kiernan Dewsbury? I think that maybe should be a segment I do on the show each week, because at the moment he is so far away from having any serious minutes that it's become a real farce, really, given Chelsea paying that money. The discourse around him being a serious option, he has been far from a serious option all season. So Andre Santos, there's so many calls for Santos to return, because it does feel like a serious option. It does feel like a player who is moving like that in his career in an upward trajectory, and it's right to bring him back. He is playing 90 minutes for Strasbourg pretty much every week at the moment, or he is a guaranteed starter. He is one of the league's most exciting young midfielders, and maybe from his own minutes point of view, it's not great. However, if you want to seriously integrate him and you don't have serious midfield backup to Enzo and Caicedo, who are playing all of the serious minutes at the moment, and if either of them go down with an injury at the moment, especially with the concerns over Romeo Lavia, what happens is kind of my big concern, especially if you're going to be selling Cesare Casadei, and maybe selling Cesare Casadei, and also, Connie Chukwuemeka seems to have no future at Chelsea as well. You really are then getting down to slim pickings, because you can't rely on Lavia staying fit for the rest of the season. So Andre Santos returning suddenly seems like a more feasible option this month, and many people want to see it happen. I would be excited to see Santos return. I really would. And because it's Strasbourg, it's a satellite club. It's not like you've loaned him out to some club, with no connection. We know a potential recall could be there, and maybe one that very much accelerates over the next few weeks, because if you look at his stats this season, 6 goals, he started 15 games, played nearly 1,500 minutes, and as a central goal scoring midfielder, as someone who has had to bide his time to become a development and kind of get that right loan, he's thriving at the moment, and could Chelsea very much benefit from his development if they bring him back and he becomes a new option for Maresca. I just want to end with 2 comments here from recent videos, just to go through them here. Calvin H, who's a loyal viewer, loyal subscriber. Dan, I do find a lot of Maresca's comments to be annoyingly or stupidly naive. I have always heard ex-professional football players say they don't repeatedly, as a manager or head coach, tell football players that they can't do something that they are currently doing, because they eventually they will start not doing it anymore, just like we have seen in our play execution by our players and our manager not helping the team with his meaningless subs. In addition, when Maresca was asked about Chelsea's climb up the table, and he repeatedly said the board never told me that Champions League or top 4 is not required, which planet does this dude live on? Even if it hasn't been explicitly explained to him, doesn't he know that it's good practice for every business or team to generate revenue, especially if it's readily attainable? In some ways, I understand Maresca's approach, but after a while, especially, again, perspective and perception is key here, and the mood, always. Certain comments at a certain point of time of the year are going to be felt a lot better than at other points of the year. When you're winning, as we were a month ago, and we were near the top of the league, everyone was kind of looking at those we're not in the title race as a bit of a joke. Now, as we're starting to slide down the table and results are starting to hit and you start to see performances dwindle and Maresca is under a lot more fire and scrutiny and we're still kind of talking as if there's no real serious objective for the season, it's taken in a very different tone and mood by fans, and I understand that. I do think that I don't think winning the title was the objective this season. I do find it slightly concerning, even reports by Matt Law, very much referencing slightly older quotes by Maresca, that he wasn't asked to get Champions League football. I really hope that is either diversion and kind of, trying to lessen the pressure on the situation, because he needs Champions League football. Chelsea need Champions League football. And there is a fine balance between understanding expectation and context, but also not getting to a point where, I hate using this word, but I'm not going to use the phrase that's constantly used on social media because it has no meaning anymore. The S word. Expectations have to be at a certain level. They should be, given the amount of money that's been spent, what the club is, what the club has been, and where it should be aiming. And you can't go from a month of, we've got this great squad, the club's moving in a great direction. You see the briefings in the media of how wonderful Chelsea are behind the scenes. And then a month later, actually Champions League is a little bit unrealistic. And apparently March is when we're going to have to define what Chelsea can do. By March, if you're in a really bad place, March, that could be endgame. If Chelsea have a really bad run from between now and the end of March, Champions League football might be out of the question. No, I think it's fair for all of us halfway through the season to analyse where we are. And I've been fair about this. 4th place, I think only 4 points, off 2nd place. We know the title's gone now. It's likely going to be Liverpool's. We're not in a bad place, and Newcastle have proven over the past month, if you go through a bad run, it doesn't mean it's the end of the year, because it's been an unpredictable Premier League season. Concern, not crisis, is the phrase I'm using at the moment. I think it's fair. However, it is also fair to look at the flaws within the squad and also reiterate what the objective of this season is. I have to, I'm going to keep on being blunt about this. If Chelsea do not get Champions League football, even if we win the Conference League, I will see this season as a failure, because I'm only going off, what the objective would have been if Mauricio Pochettino remained as Chelsea head coach. And given where Chelsea have already been this season, I don't think that's an unfair expectation. I don't think it's unfair for Chelsea fans who have seen their club spend a lot of money. None of us are asking for the quadruple. None of us are asking us to win the Premier League by 100 points. But I don't think it's unfair for Chelsea, just looking at the financial reality, to ask for Champions League football. So internally, I hope the pressure's a little bit more intense and that message is being communicated a lot more. Because what I really don't want is a perception of, none of this really matters that much. And the goalposts get shifted to a point where suddenly everyone's accepting not having Champions League football again, because that would be a massive change from what was being said last year. Final comment here. Nicole says, what is annoying me most is that all summer Maresca was talking about that he knows Chelsea's players perfectly. He watched them and he knew what every player could do. To the question, isn't the team too young and experienced? He would say that the team is very talented and top players. So why on earth did he move from knowing everything to not knowing how to assemble a starting 11 and how to motivate them to win? Players look disinterested and passive. I wouldn't entirely say that's a fair assessment, because I think I was on that Chelsea pod and we spoke about the frustration that for a long period of that Palace game, at least over half of it, and even in the second half, Chelsea created enough to win the game. There were some really nice moves, and even within this past run, there have been nice flashes. I think it's more the sense that Maresca from the bench isn't being proactive enough. I think that's the biggest criticism. I think the most valid criticism you can talk about at the moment. Now, earlier in the show, we spoke about why that is, and I think when a coach doesn't make changes, I think you instantly, if you've been watching football long enough, you come to two conclusions. Either A, he doesn't trust the backup options enough, or B, maybe as a coach he doesn't have the confidence or experience to be proactive enough. I think with Maresca, either could be true at this point. Maresca is not a coach who's been in the game for 20 years. It's not even Pochettino, right? Pochettino had a lot more experience when he took the Chelsea job. So inexperience could be playing a part. Maybe a sense of complacency. I'm not sure. I think it'd be a bit extreme at the moment based on where Chelsea are and based on even things we saw on Saturday, which really came down to Chelsea's poor finishing being exposed, being a problem. However, obviously he did make that point. I do think there is always a reality with flaws within a squad. That if you have significant flaws within a squad, especially at this level, and especially if you're trying to do serious things, it will eventually be found out. I think that if you have a lack of goals, if you have a lack of end product, that gets found out eventually. If you have defensive flaws, either in centre-back or maybe you have a lack of a defensive midfielder, that gets exposed. If you have a weak goalkeeper, that eventually gets exposed. There are examples of coaches being able to radically improve players and improve within the system. However, there are certain things that can't be improved with certain players, unfortunately. And maybe, as with a new head coach, they always like to play this thing that I'm going to work with all the players I have. I have a great squad. It's all about that, confidence building and perception and good, media kind of relations. And then when you get into the job and you get into a difficult period of the season, we see the tone of Chelsea coaches change. Now, I think there is still good enough talent to win Chelsea games. But as we spoke about, and we'll keep speaking about, I'm sure this month, things need to be improved. And I think, not all of that is down to Enzo Maresca. I think some of that is down to being given a squad that I just don't think is coherent in certain areas. So that is it for Morning Blues. Let me know your thoughts. Do you enjoy? What do you think should be changed, improved with the show? I'm happy to hear some feedback, and hopefully you do enjoy a new morning show from myself as we start the year properly. So I hope you have a great Monday. We'll be back again with, I'm sure, any new show that comes out, and we'll be looking, of course, slowly ahead to that Morecambe game at the weekend where Chelsea finally need to get their first win of 2025. So those are my thoughts. Follow me across the socials at SonOfChelsea, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.